Hey there, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Welcome to Inside Maryland Sports Be the Best podcast. I'm Tony Wheeler, joined by Calvert Hall Cardinal alum and University of Maryland close defenseman alum Mike Sheeler. Mike, say hi.
How are we doing?
Good, man. Sorry we're late, guys. We didn't have our scrimmage. This is our scrimmage, right? Rolling straight into week excitement. Building in right into week one. So welcome everyone. Glad you're here. We're going to try and do this once a week. Mike's been gracious enough to commit to the endeavor, and every week after this week we're going to try and have some guests. So we're going to cover some topics from last week. We're going to preview some stuff for this coming week, and then next week hopefully we'll start adding some things into the mix. So welcome everyone. First ever Be the Best podcast. You ready to roll, Mike?
Let's do it.
All right, buddy. Let's go. All right. So big win for the Terps against Loyola, right? Maryland comes in, some rumors coming out of the scrimmages that Maryland was kind of having some sloppy play, some issues on clearing, kind of easy turnover type stuff. So, no one really knew what to expect when the Terps came out against Loyola. They get their opening game postponed, and Loyola becomes the first game, moved inside to Jones Hill House. Terps come out big on 19-10, win over Loyola. Mike, what was your take?
I thought it was great. I thought we obviously started a little bit slower and probably a little bit more tight than we would have loved. But that's just something to expect with game one, especially where everybody's changing the mentality of I'm playing one of my teammates to I'm playing a different color jersey. So it felt like once they started loosening up and playing their game and kind of falling back on what they've been training for all of this past year, really, things really started to open up. We talked a little bit about it previously, but I feel like that Lions diving goal obviously is exciting and for obvious reasons. But afterwards, I thought it was pretty interesting. He went over to the sideline and pumped those guys up. I felt like a big energy shift right after that from that, bench yell, if you will, really take off from there. It seemed like for me.
So take us in, as a player, take us in to what that's like having to, get your game scheduled against Richmond. That was going to be a top 10 matchup. Game gets postponed, then the game gets moved inside. Take us through, from a player's perspective, you've been there. What's it like to have those changes happen? And then even the change of scenery.
So I would say it probably doesn't affect nearly as much as it might sound, especially from just the way that Coach Tills really trains everybody. At the end of the day, is it could be outside, snow. And I mean, as a fan, I was very happy it wasn't. Because that would have been absolutely freezing. And then also a couple of guys I actually talked to afterwards even mentioned that there would have been quite a few injuries. But really, the setting, it doesn't really matter at a certain point, right? Those guys are also so competitive that you roll the ball out on, insert whatever rec field you can think of right here. It would have been the same level of energy, same level of competition for sure. Now, it does help having the certainty of, okay, I know where I'm playing this weekend. I know who I'm playing, not are we playing or could it be moved, things of that nature. It does help because you start to really mentally prepare for what's to come, right? With opponent-wise, with, background setting, right? They're practicing outside, seeing the ball against the CQ Stadium benches is a little bit different than the dark gray of the Jones Hill practice facility. But come game time, a lot of that kind of goes out the window. It's not nearly as impactful, I think.
Yeah. So, the Terps obviously have an advantage on that move in because they practice from time to time. They may not practice often in Jones Hill, but they get in there. They get in there enough to be more familiar with it. Loyola, on the other hand, they're coming in straight off the bus pregame, having to head in there. Did you ever have any experiences like that as a player where, you're on the road and something changes and you're having to adjust right away.
Well, I mean, they got the heads up a little bit. Not that would change Loyola didn't change their practice probably that much because there wasn't much for them to do. I'd imagine. I wouldn't say much changed that close. We did have actually, I think it was 2011. We played Hopkins at home, and there was some thunderstorms. And I can't remember if it was we were talking about moving the game to avoid those storms, or they ended up getting delayed because of lightning. But I do remember we got delayed to the point where every game they eat team meals basically 4 hours before game time at the end of the day. Gives you make sure everybody's not too full or any of that kind of fun stuff. But when you get delayed 2-3 hours, you start getting a little hungry pregame, which I thought was a little bit interesting of a dynamic trying to figure out. And I remember several different guys walking to the door of the locker room there, just peeking outside to see if we were going to see thunder, light, something, just an answer.
Yeah,
essentially.
So one of the people watching, they were at the game, must have gotten a foot. They said they must have gotten a foot of rain that game. It's really interesting. It's really interesting.
Rocking the all white jerseys too, which
like
back in the day when Siku was, or Bird at the time was,
Bird. Yeah. So going into this game, Maryland had a lot of advantages. At the face-off spot.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Loyola had a guy coming back who was about 50% last year, but Maryland had seen him last year as well. Maryland also brings in, Henry Dodge, who, played really, really well in this game. But, that first quarter, Loyola jumps out, they jump out 1-0 pretty early. Maryland reels it back. Loyola then jumps up, 2-1, and then Maryland's got to close at the end. Early in that game, what was your sense of, was it just feeling stuff out, or, did you get a sense that like Loyola had certain game plan, certain things they were trying to do that was working early?
It felt more of again, playing a little bit tighter, essentially, of getting used to, playing their game plan, right? We have a lot of new faces on the team, whether it be transfers, whether it be younger guys getting their time now. And so it seemed a little bit of getting out of that. I'm used to, going through the motion, not the motions, but going through the different things in practice. And now it's time to let loose and go. Whereas Loyola felt like they kind of came out firing, saying this is our chance to, take a shot at number one. And out of the gates, they were doing a very good job of that. I think there was a couple little minor X's and O things where, not doing great with ball watching at some points in defense, just not having a sense of urgency on some of the clearing in the right way, not forcing it, but having a sense of urgency getting over the clearing. I bet a lot of the guys on the team are not thrilled when they see that stat come through because they know what that leads to for the week in practice. The clearing per Coach Tillman's standards probably wasn't where they wanted it. It was still versus the rest of college lacrosse pretty decent, but I think that was a little bit of a thing. But once they started playing loose and really playing lacrosse, it seemed pretty clear how the game was going to go from there.
So you mentioned that Lions goal, really being sort of a catalyst for more energy. So let's talk about the Yale guys. There was a lot of conversation coming out of the fall about how Leo Johnson and Chris Lyons. We knew Mikey Alexander was going to be playing it close, but on offense there, a lot of conversation about how are they going to play. You had seen, I think you had been to a fall scrimmage. I went to 2 of the fall scrimmages. And those scrimmages are tough because there's a ton of mixing and matching that
jersey numbers or lineups,
all the above, right?
Exactly.
Coach Tillman with the jersey, with the penny number switch up, but also mixing and matching lineups. So no one was really sure. We knew Eric Spanos was going to be at attack. You had a pretty strong suspicion that Leo Johnson was going to be at attack. The big question was, was Chris Lyons going to be that third attackman and they were going to move Braden Erks up to the midfield or back? So we got our first look. That first midfield line comes out and Jack Schultz had been injured. A lot of people thought Jack might be the first person in. And at midfield with Zach Whittier, who's returning, but also Lions comes out of the box. So that was our first set at that first look at that first midfield. Did that surprise you to see Lions running out of the box? Did you think Urksa might? You're gotta get Mike. You gotta get your gotta get that microphone. So while Mike's in a little technical issue here on his mic, so what the second midfield was also a lot of no one was sure what was going to come out on that second line. That first time through on that second line, you see Aiden Aiken coming out, which I think a lot of people would expect it. But then you start seeing some lineup changes. You start seeing Johnny Gardner, redshirt freshman out of Bethesda, who did his high school at Gonzaga. And then you start seeing things like Spencer Ford, the redshirt freshman, out of Baltimore, 5-star recruit. He's coming out. And you also at times see Matt Higgins, the true freshman, coming out of the box as well. So that second midfield line starts getting a lot of changes. Mike, I don't know if you're back or you're not connected. Your mic. At that point in the game, when that second midfield line starts coming in, there's really not much of a drop off that's going on with offense. You're still seeing the ball movement, although when that first midfield line's in, obviously Coach Phipps is really intent on attacking some of those short stick matchups with Lions and even Elijah Stobaugh. When that second midfield line comes in, the offense looks like it changes a little bit. The first midfield line, you get a lot of inverts where you get, Spanos and Urksa coming up to the midfield line. You start seeing Whittier operating more from behind the goal. In the second midfield line, you see a little more kind of traditional dodging coming from up top. And that's an interesting thing that goes on with Maryland's offense in general. Now Mike's muted. You back, Mike? Mike's having technical issues. So I'm just going to go on until Mike gets back here, and then we're going to kind of flip around here and start talking about what's moving forward. Mike's right. Big change happens. Chris Lyons scores that goal off of a restart, splits two guys from the wing. There's still pretty good time left on the shot clock, and kind of one-hand shovel shot. And as he gets up, he's fired up. And from there, the Terps really start to roll. They go into halftime up 2. I think they were up 2 heading into half. And in the third quarter, things really start to change. At that point, Henry Dodge is really taking over. He's really beginning to feel himself at the faceoff X. One of the interesting things about Dodge that's different, I think, than Carrier is Dodge is oftentimes he's not looking to go to goal. When he wins, he's flipping it over the shoulder sometimes. He's finding some space. He's getting his wing players involved. Whereas Carrier actually will start to threaten a little bit of the defense as he wins clamps and heads down. But that third quarter, Maryland wins all nine faceoffs in that third quarter, and they just start to roll. Loyola gets one back, but Maryland goes on a 7-0 run pretty much the last 10 minutes of the third, and just absolutely blows the doors open on that game. And so heading into the fourth, what was really cool too, because of how well Maryland was playing on offense, you get to see some of the younger players come in. You get to see some of the second and third line players coming in. You get a chance to see some of the people that oftentimes we don't you hear about on the scout team, and that's fun to see some of those younger guys. So Sisto Alverno is someone who comes in, really, really solid scout team player on the short stick defensive midfield group. And he comes back and he gets a goal. Hamish McPherson gets a goal and an assist, and you could just see the bench really, really having fun and really getting into it with having their, these guys that work so hard get out there and see some payoff. So the Terps really put that game to bed. Brian Rupel in his first start since 2024 gets 10 saves. He plays pretty well. I think, he's making the saves you want him to make. And the defense is looking good. Riley Reese comes in as that fourth defender down close. I think another notable, person to watch for this year is Trevor Owens, who is going to be a superstar, redshirt freshman out of Western Maryland, 3-sport athlete, and 6'6", can get all over the field. He looked great. All right, Mike's back. What do you got, Mike? Do you hear?
I'm pretty sure I'm back.
There you go, Mike.
That easy.
So I was just finishing up. I was finishing up the game, talking about some of the second line players getting in. I was talking about Riley Reese being that fourth pole and Trevor Owens, looking like he's going to be a superstar in the making, but also being able to see those scout team guys. McPherson gets a goal and an assist. Sisto Verno gets a goal, and that's always fun.
Roll guy.
And so, in your time in College Park, the culture may have been a little bit different, but when you're one of those players that works so hard on the scout team and you get those opportunities in games to go in and see the ball hit the back of the net, get a takeaway check, get a good ground ball, and the bench explodes. What's that like?
Yeah, that's definitely awesome. I going into I don't know what the feeling is of the ball hitting the back of the net in that scenario. Personally, I wish, but it is a lot of fun, and it's really kind of great to see the bench go crazy too, because you're trying to do the same for those starters, and they're losing it in the same aspect. I will say, getting out there's always the nerves of, I've been running the scout defense. Let me make sure I do our defense right, because then otherwise, Jesse's going to be on me in this scenario, or Coach Loff, or other coaches along in between. But yeah, that was always fun to get out there and get some run. Again, against a different jersey finally, and
So today, Coach Tillman, had his midweek press conference, and among other things, we're going to talk about the Syracuse game in a little bit, but some of it was also talking about these younger players, Spencer Ford, getting 2 goals.
I'm excited with his game.
Why is that?
I think, I believe from his time on the field, his plus minus was pretty solid. Mm-hmm. From at least what I noticed. I know there's probably a couple times he was out there and with the leg sleeve, I just thought he was Spanos or one of those guys. But I think I got cut out there a little bit with my tech situation here, but the mixture of the different lines, I think, is a great thing, because it shows that we've got the depth of who's the hot hand that can go, and we can play with whoever on that same line, and we can mix and match to be able to create different matchup issues for other teams. Other teams are going to scout to different lines, and if we have essentially a line of 5 guys, it could be any 5. It's hard to do the matchups the right way.
Right.
So on that side, plus us just finding our grooves, going to not going to be solved in week 1. You don't win a national championship in week 1.
Right.
So it's going to be nice seeing those guys just develop. And I know, with Spencer redshirting last year is probably, really excited to get out there and play somebody else.
Yeah.
And go compete. And I think he's got a lot of upside. I'm excited to see what he does, and making sure he gets the attention for doing it. I mean, he had the opening goal of our season, technically.
Yeah.
For being a nice right spot at the right time for a rebound there. But I think he's going to do some great stuff. And obviously you hear about what he and Matt Higgins did in high school together. I'm excited to see that transfer to the next level.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned him earlier, get some burn.
Yeah. And look, the Terps basketball won.
Yes.
We're recording, kind of in a game, because
I was about to say, do we delay it for that little bit? But it was like 4 minutes still going. And that would be where we jinx them, right? Where
I know.
Hit,
sorry.
The Michigan State won. Last second bucket or something, because we waited
to watch
just to hurt those guys. But hey, stacking wins.
Ignorance is bliss. So give me two players, offense, defense, goalie, special teams, whatever. Give me two players that to you in that game against Loyola, you went, yeah, I liked that. Give me two guys that stood out.
So I will not use Lyons because I already mentioned him doing the, firing up the bench there after that goal. But that would have probably been one. I think I loved some of the scrappiness I saw from Leo Johnson, where at least from my angle, I'm not going to say we're all angels here, but at least from my angle, it appeared that guy was chirping at him pretty much all game, and Leo ended it pretty strongly, and I liked showing that bit of fight. Now there's a boundary there of not going too crazy and letting it change your game, and I think we'll get to it a little bit here in the preview of Syracuse, but that's going to be a very common theme on that field, and making sure it doesn't mess with you. I'd say as far as there's just some of those knowns where you've got Larkin breaking up field with nobody within 10 yards of him, and all you can do is point and scream to give it to him. But he did have the one missed shot. There's a great picture somewhere.
He missed one in close, and then he hit a pipe. So that third one,
that one's haunting him right now. I didn't want to go too far, but there is a great picture of him diving for the end line for the ball there. Basically looks like he's about to body slam the Loyola guy. But I think another one that won't get as much attention is I think Rupel played really well. Right, at a certain point for your own team's goalie, if you hear about him, it's not necessarily always the best thing, because it either means they're getting a lot of shots that they had to make amazing saves, or they're picking up the ball from the back of the net a lot. And I think Rupel played really well. I mean, a little bit of a bummer on that one. I won't even call it diving goal, the falling goal on the clear there that I was in the highlights, but
it almost looked like on replay. Loyola had a breakout, and the ball gets thrown ahead to a Loyola attackman, and it looks like he's fallen down, and it looked like Rupel didn't really think he was actually going to shoot the ball. And
I'm not sure the Loyola guy thought he was going to put it on goal either. In fairness, I mean that. Every angle I've seen was like that. There's not a ton you can do about that, and also 9 out of 10 times that's on the end line, not in the net.
And Brian's going to learn, right? And especially going into Syracuse, and we're going to talk in a bit here about Syracuse, but balls are going to be coming from everywhere. Syracuse is going to shoot the second they step on the field. All right, so
I know you only asked for two, but I'll throw one more in there. As the face-off units, I thought it was more obviously, the Jonah, Henry, Dodge doing everything that they were, and realistically dominating. It also was a lot of wing play that it's hard to name all three guys each time.
Trey Fleece comes in, from UMBC, and at UMBC last year as a short stick has like 43 ground balls, right? Like that's obscene. That's an obscene number for a non-face-off guy. You don't normally see ground ball numbers that high, out of a field player. And he did really well. He was noticeable off the wings too. Of course, George Stamos, again, looks like those are going to be the short sticks on the wings. They did a great job, and Trevor Owens is going to be a star. And of course, AJ's first team All-American caliber. So
I think it's even better for, Trevor working with AJ and being, as connected as they're going to be, is going to rub off pretty well on Trevor. And again, as you mentioned earlier, he had 6'6", he doesn't hide. As a Ravens fan, seeing him in 52, I love that too, but that's just a bias of mine personally. I got to ask you, what did you think of the Jones Hill House as a game?
I loved it. And I got to be honest, I loved it. And, I know on the Inside Maryland sports boards, there was a question about it. What I liked about it, like you can't sit anywhere. There's no stands in there. I was lucky. I was on the media side where they had some tables set up. But what I liked about it is, you're 10 to 12 feet above the field, but you're looking right over the field. So you still get the perspective of height to be able to kind of see how the whole thing is moving. but you're not super far back. You can hear the players talking. Yes, it echoes kind of when you're up, like where you and I were up, when you're up on that concourse level. The echoing was clearly an issue for us, but I think down on the field it's not. I don't think they have problems so much with echoes. But I got to be honest, I thought it was a really, really, really good viewing experience. And my son was with me, and he was like, "This is the best viewing perspective I've ever had at any lacrosse game because of that being on top of the field, but at height." And he's like, "Can they do this all the time?" You know. So, what'd you think? You're back on mute. Mike's gonna throw his computer. Mike's gonna throw his computer out. But so I'm gonna wrap that game up again. Really, really nice win for Maryland. Great way to start the season, and a really good springboard. You're calming those nerves. It really would have been nice to have that Richmond game as well, just because you get a lot of continuity. A lot of college coaches will tell you that the most improvement that you'll see between a team is between game 1 and game 2. And so when we start talking about that Syracuse game and kind of what to expect, Syracuse is going to be on game 3 for them. This will be Maryland's second game. It's going to be kind of fascinating to see what goes on. So around the rest of the college lacrosse world, Towson Hopkins played yesterday, and that was a game that I thought was a really, really fascinating game. Towson hasn't won at Homewood Field in several years. And they're up 7-4, head like a couple minutes before halftime. And, a couple breakdowns by Towson, all of a sudden it's tied 7-7 going into half. Game's tied at 11, and Hopkins scores the final 2 goals. It was a really fun game to watch. If you had a chance to watch that game on ESPNU, it was a really, really fun game to see. Mikey Weishauer at Towson, he probably, if he wanted, could have scored more than 4 goals. Hopkins had their best defender on him, Quentin Kilrain, and Weishauer took him to the goal almost at will. And what surprised me about Hopkins, number one, they started a true freshman in goal. I thought by and large he outplayed Towson's goalie and really, really kept Hopkins in the game. Towson took a huge number of shots. I think they approached 50 shots in the game. They really only shot about 52, 53%. So they weren't getting a ton on goal. But, Dash Lamity, that's the goalie at Hopkins, had a great game for a freshman. The other thing that really surprised me, Towson had a really, really hard time clearing the ball. I think they had 6 failed clears in that game. And Hopkins on their ride has been really, really active, and they're not jumping into 10-man rides when they're doing that. They're really making those turnovers happen just by playing a straight up, 9-man ride. So Mike, I'm kind of wrapping up the Towson Hopkins game. And I was talking about how Towson had a really hard time clearing, but it was really a function of Hopkins being really, really aggressive, not in a 10-man, and just really forcing Towson into bad spots where, Towson players are trapped in the corner. They're throwing balls back to the midfield. And that was the difference. The difference in those possessions was really what got Hopkins in the game. Jimmy Ayers had 4 goals for them. Charlie Eiler had 3. Matt Collison was actually kind of quiet the whole game, which is not what you expected. So that game nationally stood out to me. Mike, what other national games stood out to you?
I think one in particular was the Michigan Marquette game, mainly around the fact that Marquette players playing with 2 of their teammates passing away in an accident this fall, and how just overall tough that is really to go out there, starting the game honoring Noah and Scott for passing, and then turning around trying to play somebody like a Michigan and playing together is not easy. So it was, I think, pretty special to see how they responded to that, because Michigan's pretty decent.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. I think the Jacksonville UNC game,
Yeah.
I didn't get to see much of the action, but seeing the score in Jacksonville basically doing in 2 1-goal games at 0-2,
Yeah.
dangerous 0-2 team.
Yeah, Jacksonville loses to Rutgers down in Naples, Florida, I think, in overtime. They go back and visit UNC. The big thing too about that UNC game is Owen Duffy didn't score a goal, neither did Dom Petramala. So, Jacksonville has a chance to tie that game with about a minute and a half left, and can't even get a shot on goal, and UNC runs the clock out. UNC gets a lot of hype, right? Like, they recruit so well, and there's a lot of national kind of push around UNC maybe being a dark horse Final Four, national championship type team. What's been your kind of perception of UNC, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, having so much talent but not really seeming to be able to put it together?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been watching them overly close, but I do think, or at least it seems from my view, they almost are trying to mix things up so much with so much of the new guys, where they get a lot of good opportunities because they've got some of these younger guys getting action that people haven't seen really. And then as people start to figure out how they're doing what they're doing, it starts to slow them down a bit. But I think having not watched the game, their 2 top guys not scoring could be part of what Jacksonville did to, in a way, junk up their offense, and you've got to try to reinvent the offense without 2 of your players.
They just have so much talent everywhere. I mean, Bresci recruits so well, and for some of the kind of head scratching, results that come out of UNC, post Chris Gray, essentially, UNC's been kind of in the wilderness. Game that caught my attention, future Maryland opponent, Virginia Cavaliers. They moved inside the George Welsh football center, and they play Colgate. Now, Colgate's got like a real interesting, style of play. They kind of play with their hair on fire, 10-man ride the whole game. But what's interesting is in that game against UVA, they sat back in a zone the entire game. McCabe Millen gets like 4 goals and 5 assists. Truett Sunderland, Baltimore native, I think he had 6 goals. The Calvert Hall guy, 6 goals. Brendan Millen, freshman out of McDonough, McCabe's younger brother, gets 5 assists, essentially standing behind the goal and just throwing to open players in the crease. The game's kind of close until through the end of the third quarter, and UVA pulls away. I don't know. What do you take out of a game like that where you're playing against a team that's sitting in a zone?
It's tough because, right, a little bit to what I was saying with the UNC aspect. If you junk up and throw something completely off the wall on that team, right? It was, as you said, close till late third, and then they pulled away. It worked, right?
Yeah,
because it got them that far to keep it a close game. If they pulled away a lot earlier, then you're switching out of that to try to stop the bleeding. But obviously the stats at the end of the game look great. But I think it's throwing some of that junk out there at a certain rate, making them beat them outside early until you find that magic that does it. I'm sure Terps will see plenty of zones this year, whether we like it or not. Personally, I can't stand the zone defense. Playing it, watching it, all of that, playing against it, playing it personally, especially now the shot clock. I think it's a little bit.
Yeah,
I don't like that.
I think you're right. I think and Loyola hopped in and out of zone a little bit. That's where a guy like Spencer Ford is just so good. You bring him in and he's finding cracks in those defenses. You also got a lot of good shooters now, stretch shooters for Maryland. If teams are gonna play zone, they against Maryland this year, they better be playing some weird junk zones.
Well, it's that, and it's finding the spots and the guys, feeling comfortable with, okay, I got my hands free. This is where I want to pull it. Right.
Right.
I think against Loyola, we saw that a little bit earlier on, where it was okay. Usually, as we're going through working the offense and practice, it's okay. Here's your look. This is your look, or we move it here. And so realizing, I don't have to go pass it to the next guy. I got a shot here. Is a good chance, right? And I think some of the zone stuff, it comes a little bit to that too, where obviously we've got guys that can pull it. It's just a matter of getting that step, making the defense move too.
Yep.
Which I think we've had issues with in the past. But as we start, if we can have Ursa sit behind and just pick teams apart, again, shout out to Ursa, quiet 4 assists. I said earlier, didn't even realize he had 4 until I pulled the stats up. But
right,
that's not a small accomplishment either.
So I'm gonna talk briefly about one more game before we talk about Syracuse. I do want to mention Army goes in Piscataway and they beat Rutgers 11-9. Looks like Rutgers is still struggling to score. It'd be interesting to see how Rutgers develops. So that's a good win for Army.
Yeah,
not a good Big Ten aside from Maryland and Hopkins kind of carrying the Big Ten banner. Penn State drops a game 14-13 indoors again in State College. They drop it to Villanova. Penn State, they lose a lot from last year, but they still bring a lot back.
I think it's you want the parity happening unless it's not your conference,
right,
or not your schedule,
right.
Especially looking at the turf schedule, we have an unbelievably difficult schedule. You look at a lot of these other teams too. Jacksonville hasn't been the blue blood traditionally, but I don't think they're anything to, ignore. Same thing with Villanova. I think Colgate's been really scratching and clawing. And I will give a quick shout to the Colgate marketing when they did their non-conference schedule release. They had the head coach's kids do the look at the logos and try to name them. If you didn't,
that's fun. Oh, that's fun.
They did some pretty good stuff. I thought that was pretty funny. But
I gotta look that up.
It's worth it. But still, a lot of these teams are getting better and can compete at these levels, especially if they have a couple shots at the Blue Bloods or the Big Ten ACC big name schools. Not to say the other games don't matter, but this just becomes a little bit of their Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
They want to take those big names down so you get everybody's best, regardless of if they're ranked in the top 5 or ranked at all.
So a question here coming from the YouTube stream. Did Coach Tillman address the Schultz injury? He did. I actually asked, Inside Lacrosse had published something about, an injury. So I asked Coach Tillman today, any other updates on Jack Schultz. And, Coach Tillman, he's going to say a lot and he's not going to want to give away much. But what he did say, he again said that he's hopeful that they're going to see Schultz out there. And he said sooner rather than later. Who knows if that means this week or if it means next week. I do think that especially early in the season, Coach Tillman is probably going to err more on the side of caution around bringing guys back too fast.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
well,
so
depending on what the injury is too, there's going to be playing in this cold.
Yeah,
is going to be a higher risk of re-injury and making it that much worse. Where, like I said, I talked to a couple guys after the game on Saturday, and one of the first things that was brought up was how many guys would have gone down with injuries playing in that temperature, wind chill and all that stuff. So the whole, lacrosse is a spring sport thing is now I will say back in my day, we started scrimmages beginning of February. 2 weeks later, we started games. So it wasn't that drastically later, but I also think this is one of a historically cold winter, so everything sounds so much worse than.
Yeah, I mean, look, Maryland started last year or like February 2nd, right?
Yeah,
like
it's never been that much of an issue until this insanely cold winter, right?
So let's talk about our friends up in the Dome. 2-0 Syracuse, second-ranked Syracuse. Coach Tillman has never lost to Syracuse as a head coach. I believe he's 5-0 against Gary Gate. The game's up in the dome. If you ever have a chance to go see a game at Syracuse, it is really a phenomenal experience to see a game there. It's you're on top of the field. The fans are super knowledgeable. It's a great venue to see a game. It's so historic. They're led by Joey Spallina. Has got 14 points on 7-7. They beat St. Joe's 20-2 last week, and they come rolling out now to face the Terps. What are your early thoughts on the matchup?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a fun game. I mean, obviously, 1 versus 2, it's not going to be unexciting, but that environment, Friday night, it's going to be chaotic. There's going to be a lot of conversations about how everybody's doing between each other on the field. Both teams, I think one of the things that didn't get highlighted very much last year is how much conversations happened pregame that led to the Terps getting clipped a little bit for making comments on the dome. But it is a pretty cool environment. I've one of the first things somebody mentioned to me after the game Saturday was that we're not expecting a lot of the calls to go our way.
Yep.
And again, this is another Tillmanism here, but you don't want to also leave it in the hands of the ref to impact it.
Yep.
I know I can almost guarantee one fan base is going to leave that game upset with the ref's calls, whether justified or not.
So, Mike, as a former defenseman, that attack unit for Syracuse, you got Joey Spallina, who's not really a traditional ex-attackman. As he's progressed more with his indoor box play, he's actually looking like he's becoming more and more one-handed, only keeping the stick in his right hand. He's not going to run by anyone, but he's super smart. He's super slick. Yeah. He's super skilled, and he can shoot, right? He can hit. Yeah. He can hit, dimes.
He's very dangerous with his hands free, right? Whether it's a feed, overhand, behind the back, any way, if his hands are free, he's a dangerous player, right? He doesn't earn all those points by accident. We joked a little bit about how this Coach Till said this was the most talented team we're facing, and I know the mentality in the locker room is always the team we're facing this week is the most talented team in college lacrosse every time.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, looking at this team, they really are a very talented team. I see where a lot of the excitement is. There are a lot of high risk, high reward type of playing.
Yeah.
However, their risks pay off quite often.
Yeah.
And I'll be fair, they also make great highlight plays out of those higher risks. So if we're not playing in our style of ball and they catch us, they will absolutely maximize that. Where you go chasing sticks, they're going to run right by you and score. If you aren't watching your guy, you'll get back cut perfectly. And again, they can feed it, like you said, a little bit more one-handed, but they can throw it behind the back just as well as they're probably better than their offhand.
So, you played with Maryland defensive coordinator Jesse Bernhardt. You guys played together in College Park. You guys are still friends and close. And Jesse is a really, really good, like an elite mind when it comes to defensive scheming. We know Schaller is gonna take that matchup against Spallina. We know that Will Schaller is not gonna let Joey get to his 5-5 spot to throw behind the back passes. We know that Maryland's really good at navigating picks, because one thing that Syracuse likes to do with Joey, they like to give him those kind of low mid-wing picks, like a box set, and let him sweep over the top or go under the pick. So Maryland's going to be prepared for that. What I'm curious to get your perspective on, I always think Michael Leo is severely underutilized at Syracuse. They run him as a midfielder. He came out of high school as, a top 5 recruit at attack. Last game against St. Joe's, Bear Alexander, their big sophomore who's been playing attack, that left-handed attack spot that Owen Hiltz used to have. He was sick. So they dropped Leo down to attack the entire game. That's a matchup that I'm curious to see if they put Leo down low. Is that a Peter Lake matchup? Do they try and get Mike Alexander on him? I think that's a real tough matchup for Maryland's defense.
Yeah, and I think their offense is a little bit like ours, where guys can play. It doesn't matter what position if they're attack midfield. They're the threat in that personnel type of situation. So, I would assume Jesse's doing the matchups based on everybody's strengths. Whether it ends up seeming like we're double polling up to the midfield because those guys are playing at midfield and deserve that attention. But they can play at any spot on the field. And a lot of times from the last two games, you could see Spallina being basically top of the field, dodging around the guys. They'll use the picks. They'll also just not use the pick either. So I think that's one of the things we do well. And there's a clip online from Jesse giving a presentation on playing picks to a coaches convention. But some of the things those earlier teams that they faced struggled with was seeing a pick was coming, so they're jumping off trying to get around it when they don't even go up to the pick. Right. So those guys can beat their guy outside of Joey Spallina can beat his guy, I think, but I think he's looking to feed and mine's in a way elsewhere as he's dodging. But all of those guys, if you're not respecting them as a dodger, can take you to the rack very easily. Yeah. Hands free, can absolutely finish. I think they're a very strong offense, and obviously getting to see 20 goals last game helps our sample size for what that looks like. But
so Maryland last year double polls the Syracuse midfield. They try and put a poll in Leo. They try and put a poll on Luke Roa. He's a DMV native out of St. John's in DC. They shorted Finn Thompson in the crease. Be interesting to see if that plays out. Again, on the defensive end for Syracuse, again, two Baltimore DC guys. Billy Dwan is not their primary on-ball defender, but I guess because of his size, he's a good secondary on-ball guy. He's not their primary guy. My guess is size-wise, he'll be on Spanos. Riley Figueres, another St. John's kid out of DC. He seems to be their top cover guy. Are they going to deploy him against Urksa? Are they going to deploy him against Leo Johnson? Right. But I think for Syracuse, the big matchup, question mark, that third defenseman, a guy named Jordan Beck, primarily has been an off-ball player his entire career, man down specialist, kind of his first time being on the field as a starting defenseman. Big guy, 6'4", 220 kind of guy. Does he have the foot speed? He's either going to get Urksa or he's going to get Johnson. If he gets Urksa, they're going to invert, and Urksa is going to be running at him from the midfield. Does Syracuse decide to bump their long stick midfielder, a guy named Chuck Kaczynski? Do they bump him down and try and figure out a different solution for LSM? That's going to be a fascinating thing to watch too.
And that probably changes throughout the game, realistically. If I'm putting myself in D coordinator at Syracuse shoes, that's going to be something we change. And one of the things I saw from them is they like to try to create chaos essentially on defense, where if you're not paying attention, the guy that you just picked is going to try to jump you.
Yep.
And try to get a double, try to get transition and get the ball moving the other way. So going back to kind of, again, I feel like I'm shortchanging them a little bit by saying a high risk, high reward type of thing, because it's in a lot of their cases not often a risk. But they like to try to create some opportunities on defense, mess you up a little bit if you're not, focusing the right way or keeping your head on a swivel. So I think they'll probably be moving it throughout, just because that means we also then have to change what we're doing throughout and read and react, sort of like switching in and out of a zone kind of thing. Right. You got to change your offense a little bit. So
I do think Maryland has an advantage, in the defensive midfield. I think Maryland's defensive midfield, two really good LSMs. They actually ran 5 shorties. I actually went back and looked. James Gardner, redshirt freshman James Gardner, he actually was getting quite a bit of run in the first half. So Maryland's going 5 deep at the shorty unit. Syracuse is a little thinner there. They're not as athletic. And Maryland last year, and pretty much since Gate has been in Syracuse as a head coach, Maryland has just mercilessly picked apart Syracuse's defensive midfield. That's going to be an interesting thing to watch too, is how much can Maryland really get downhill and impose their will on that defensive midfield.
Well, I think once we see matchups too, a little to what we're said with what Syracuse would do is doing the pick games to change the matchups where you get the shorties on who we want them to be. I think it was a couple times it happened for the last game with Urksa getting a shorty, or not Urksa, sorry, Spanos getting a shorty. And I mean, I was starting to fist bump a little bit at each time I saw it personally, but you know, it was interesting. Somebody kind of pointed this out to me at the game as far as Spanos. I feel like for him it will be he tends to have a little bit more of a quiet first half,
Mhm.
and I don't know what it is at halftime. Something clicks for him, and look out second half.
Yep.
But I will say this matchup's going to be a very like I said, crazy environment. Again, the Friday night aspect, right? We ended their season last year the way that we did. That's going to leave a bitter taste in their mouth all off season. Plus, they got the taste of blood in the water there with making the Final Four. So I actually look back at it stat wise for that Final Four game. Obviously, the score was pretty favorable in our direction throughout most of the game, but we lost the turnover battle. They had 10, we had 15. We lost the ground ball battle. They had 35, we had 31. We lost calls turnovers. They had 10, we had 7. So we actually lost a lot of the statistical battle, which I thought was a little bit surprising, especially how it all kind of ended. But
and I know you and I have talked about the Fogo matchup is going to be key. Maryland's got two good guys. I think Henry Dodge is at Maryland because he has played John Mullen before. He's also played Andrew McMeekin from Princeton, who they play. So two big face-off guys, and Henry Dodge is a load. He is every bit of like a big, strong guy. And that Fogo matchup is going to be key because if the Terps can get possession and can really convert, I mean, look, they shot plus 40% against Loyola. If they shoot plus 40% on Friday in the Dome, I mean, it's over.
Yeah.
It's over. So it's going to be interesting. Right now, Johnny McCool in goal for Syracuse. He's like 70% saves, but given the quality of opponent Syracuse has played, it's tough. It's going to be tough to see.
Yeah, I think other part is the shot chart of what he's seen too, right?
Yep.
Shooting the same thing here with Maryland, talking 40+% shooting rate is we're not just sitting at 12 yards pulling off 40% because that'd be insane. But getting the good shots, I think there will be opportunities for us to take advantage of their mistakes or their aggressiveness. We just have to be smart with the ball and be smart with our play of not trying to change our game to match theirs or follow conversations on the field. But there are going to be those opportunities, and I think the riding and clearing game, as Coach preaches relentlessly, is going to be huge. So they got a decent amount of goals, actually. Well, like I said, 20 last game, so a decent total.
Yeah.
But there was a good amount that they were able to get transition quickly, get the ball up, and also off of field clears. And so, again, another add the Tillmanisms here. A field clear is a half a goal at the end of the day in their eyes. So if we're giving it too many, that's a problem. I guess I haven't looked at the exact stats on how many goals off field clears happened against Loyola, but the falling goal by Loyola was one of those, I think, field clear situations too.
Yeah, it was.
So there's your full goal total.
Yeah.
So
Mike and I aren't going to make any game predictions as usual.
My prediction is it's going to be a really fun game. It's going to be a lot of conversations between everybody, fans to players, players to players, etc. And I think one fan base walks away upset with the referees, regardless.
Well, you all get to, for IMS subscribers, you all get to see my preview and score prediction, before the game. But we're not going to do that. But what Mike and I are going to do to wrap things up, to wrap up our first episode, is I'm going to have 3 games here using FanDuel's. I don't condone gambling, but spice things up.
To keep the predictions more fair.
Yeah, we got to spice things up a little bit. We're not going to, so we're going 3 games. I'm going to talk about it. Right. I'm going to start UVA at Richmond. Richmond is a 1.5 goal favorite. Who you got?
So I think that actually swung a little bit. That That one I think is going to be that one. I feel I think the over is 24.5.
Okay.
I feel good on the over. I feel like it could go either way because I think Richmond's a dangerous team, but UVA is also UVA.
Games at Richmond.
At Richmond outside, I'll go Richmond here.
You think they'll cover 1.5?
Yeah, we'll go with that. I'll add that my bias of playing an ACC edition. I have certain feelings towards.
I actually think Richmond's going to win that game too. I think they will. I think they will cover the 1.5 myself. I think, UVA is real top heavy so far in scoring, and they got problems at the faceoff, and no one's super sure. Their UVA is starting the Air Force transfer, Merrick, in goal. He didn't really have a good game against Colgate. I feel good about Richmond. All right, game number 2, Penn State at Princeton. Princeton's giving 4.5. 4.5 against the Knits.
Yeah,
in Princeton. That's crazy.
I think I'm going Penn State on that. I'll throw my biases in there. I'll acknowledge accordingly with the John Haas offensive coordinator. After rebounding after her last game as well, they're going to come, hair on fire essentially there. And the over under, I think for that is 25.5, I believe.
Oh, interesting. I would take the over on that.
Oh,
one.
Absolutely.
I mean, that one seems like a 17-16 kind of game, right?
At least.
I think Penn State will cover. I don't think they're going to win though. I really think Princeton's going to be one of the last 4 teams standing. I think they are that good. I think their attack unit, Inside Lacrosse just did their attack rankings this week. They had Princeton at 1, Maryland at 2, and they kind of talked about flip-flopping. That Princeton attack unit is lethal. And Princeton, that first midfield line is just phenomenal. I think it'll be a fun game. I think they're going to have I think McMeekin, it's going to be a good face-off battle. I just kind of get the feeling, it's weird the Ivies start later. And what a first game to have.
Well, it is a spring sport, so good for them.
What a first game. You got Penn State coming in after losing at home to Villanova, but 4.5. When I saw that, I was like, good Lord.
It's you got to have that strength of schedule. It matters so much at the end of the year. And, was it Army doing well against Rutgers? I feel like it's their attempt to start getting a better schedule to not be left out at the end of the day.
Yep. All right, last one. The battle on Charles Street. Loyola Greyhounds head down to Homewood, take on Hopkins. Hopkins is a 3.5 goal favorite. We got lots of people. We got people even making fun of Quint in the comments.
Yeah.
We're
not sure which way his hair is going to go on that one, but I think so it's really hard for me to pick who I think would win that 3.5 because I'm going to go Loyola out of principle there. We don't condone betting. Definitely don't use my picks or at least my justifications.
I think 3.5's a lot.
Oh, I
think that's a lot of goals.
Yeah.
Especially maybe it's because I watched the Towson game and I saw how close that was. I do think Loyola is a lot better this year. Look, Loyola was in 6 1-goal games last year. They finished 3-11, but 6 1-goal games, they lose 5, right? They clearly weren't that bad of a team last year. I thought they actually played really, really well in that first half against Maryland. Just the possession, they just couldn't.
I think the other part that probably isn't going to be looked at nearly as much is because Hopkins played yesterday, Tuesday, and then Loyola's got the full week of practice. Short week for Hopkins. They likely rested Wednesday, probably watched film and all that stuff, but not out practicing as what makes sense. Not discrediting that at all, but having that shorter week for your body to recover and the difference. I've seen a couple people talking about the spring sport comment where it's 2 games a week in high school and all of that, but the games in college are just take a much, much bigger toll on your body.
Yeah.
To be able to turn around. And that's part of what makes winning on Memorial Day weekend so difficult, because it's that quick of a turnaround against some very, very good competition.
Yeah.
So the short week thing is going to be interesting. Where I'm starting to feel I'm talking myself into the Loyola pick here. Actually,
I mean, are you picking him straight up, or you're picking him cover?
I mean, in my heart, yes, I'm taking him straight up. I would like that. Now,
I have a feeling Loyola is going to cover. I think it's going to be a lot like that Towson game. I think Loyola is going to hang with them. I think they cover, but I think Hopkins wins. 3.5 goals. That's a lot. That's a lot.
Well, again, that week difference, a week of practice after what happened with us, and then again Hopkins on a short week, a little bit of a scare there with Towson for them. I think, which I think came down to a bit of the, making the disciplined fundamental plays towards the end, and going one way or the other, unfortunately. But again, obviously was rooting for Towson there.
So was I, and I'll be rooting for Loyola myself on Saturday. All right, man. Well, hey, this was our first attempt, season 1, episode 1, on Inside Maryland Sports Radio, Be the Best podcast. Mike and I will be back next week, and we'll do better. We'll always do better. We'll always be the best.
A new microphone, always getting better, right?
We'll always shoot to be the best.
I'm gonna go throw my laptop off a bridge real quick, and then we'll get started.
Well, thanks for everyone for tuning in, and we will see you all next week.